Hey everyone, I'm Ryan here. Today we're going to do a quick top 5 of my favorite signatures in the game. This one was a really easy list for me to compile. Anything You Can Do Better is my number 5 for Winifred Habermock. I just really enjoy this card. It's very simple. It doesn't take a lot of reading. There are very few cards where I remember the first time I saw them, I was like, whoa, nice. And that's how I felt about this. I was like, oh, how many question marks can you really fit on one card? I guess it's 6. This is just a wonderful card. It's thematically perfect for winning. It's just a good card as well in addition to that, and it's exactly what you want out of her deck. It's a very cool card. I love everything about it. It's also not very complicated, so we'll be moving on to number 4 now. Analytical Mind from Minty Fan. This card is one of those awkward cards where when you pick the Investigator, you're building for this card. This is probably a huge part of why you picked Min, which is unfortunate because unlike some other assets, which we will see later, this is not just in play from the start. She doesn't always do this, and as a result, you have to build your decks to find this quickly. Despite that though, Analytical Mind does something that nothing else in the game does. It lets you commit cards across the map, which is insane. In addition, it doesn't just do that. That would be really interesting on its own, but it also means you draw a card every time you commit one card to a test, well, once a round anyway. But that is so strong. It's a draw engine, it's team support, it's a wonderfully powerful and unique card, and it is the main reason to play Min. I know she has scavenging stuff, her card pool is very strong, but the thing about Min that I think appeals to people, at least to me, is the promise of Analytical Mind. It's a really cool card and I love it. Moving on to our number 3, we have Molly Maxwell, the alternative asset for Dexter Drake. This is just a card that does what a class needs in a class that can't normally do it. Mystics aren't good at drawing. I know they have some good draw cards that's gotten better over time, but it's just not their thing. They're not great at it. And Molly Maxwell lets you search your deck for specific cards, basically. When you build your deck right, you say Relic, and it pulls specifically the Cyclopean Hammer. You say Criminal, it gets Leo DeLuca. You say Tome, it pulls Scroll of Secrets. You say Spell, if all your spell assets are clue-finding assets, it will pull a clue-finding asset, for instance. This is just a really good, really iconic card for Dexter. It is very strong, it does something his class can't normally do, and that's why I like it so much. And it's why my number 2 on the list is Gatebox. The only thing more iconic for Mystics than not being able to draw well is not being able to move. Until Summon Servitor, they literally just couldn't really do it at all. Gatebox is the best movement in the game. It is at minimum 3 copies of Untabooed Elusive, a card that is so strong they just had to completely rework it into a new card. And not only is it 3 copies of Elusive, there are 3 copies of Elusive that cost 0 instead of 2. This card is insane. Luke Robinson has the best movement in the game entirely because of this card, and his class doesn't really give him any movement. I guess Off-Color Seeker absolutely does, but the Mystic 5 is supposed to be bad at moving, and Luke just isn't. It completely breaks him out of the role you would expect him to be in, because Gatebox is half of the puzzle of not being a normal Mystic, the other half is Seeker Draw, and all the standard weaknesses of Luke, or all the standard weaknesses of a Mystic rather, just sort of disappear in Luke. He has great draw, great mobility, and the fact that this starts in play is a huge part of why Luke is what he is. If you had to draw this like Analytical Mind, I don't think it would even make the list. I'd be really upset about this card. I'd be like, man, why is he defined by mobility, but only eventually? He's one of the most immobile characters and randomly he switches over to mobility, it just doesn't work. But because it starts in play, it's just so strong and so unique and so character defining. Now, moving on to my number 1 card. I played it on the channel very recently. It's Bonnie Walsh. This character is a nightmare. She is so strong. She doesn't read that strong. She's 2/2 soak for 3. She gives you 2 question marks, so 3 on any test when you tap her with Charlie. And yeah, that's super cool. That's all fine, but that's not that great. You ready another asset? Who cares? I mean, yeah, it gives you more stats. Why is that number 1? It's Summoned Hound. Bonnie Walsh is just a Summoned Hound. She's the 3rd copy of that. Because you always ready Summoned Hound. Why would you ready anyone else? And occasionally you do ready someone else for reasons. But this card was already very, very good. If you play Charlie Kane, you are likely hard mulliganing for specifically Bonnie, because you are so much better with her in play. The stats she gives are not minor. These are huge amounts of stats for a character with base 1s, With Bonnie Walsh in play, you can resist the Mythos Ace. You normally can't. With Bonnie Walsh in play, you can do a lot more in a given turn than you otherwise would have been able to. Because if you're tapping, say, a Milan for 2 book, Bonnie Walsh is representing +5 to your investigates over the round. And then after all of that, after all of just like the basic really good things about Bonnie, once you're set up, you start readying your signature cards, or not your signature cards, your build around cards like Summoned Hound, where instead of just getting more stats, now you're getting another investigate at base 5 as a lightning bolt, and she just goes to the fucking moon. She's insane. She's so important to playing Charlie, not just as a stopgap in the early game, but throughout everything. At the beginning of Scenario 1, at the end of Scenario 8, Bonnie Walsh is the most important card in the deck beginning to end. Although I will admit that once we have Summoned Hound, she becomes tied for that role, but Summoned Hounds wouldn't be as strong if you didn't have Bonnie, because you would just have less of them. And Bonnie is so good and so iconic, and she feels like exactly what she should be. It's the star of the deck, and the simple fact is that most signatures aren't. Like, realistically, you can play games where you don't draw Molly, or you don't draw Analytical Mind, or you don't draw anything you can do better, and you don't really care that much. Like, it might suck a little bit, but the game basically plays as you wanted it to. If you don't draw Bonnie, the game didn't go according to plan. That's a huge part of why Survivor Seeker, in my opinion, is easily the best way to build Charlie Kane, is because you just need to draw certain cards, and the card draw available in those colors is insane. And one of those certain cards that you need is Bonnie Walsh. Anyway, I've been Rather Coherent. These have been my favorite signature cards in Arkham Horror, and I'll see you next time with my 5 least favorite cards across the board in Arkham Horror to wrap up these 5 days of top 5s. If you liked the video, then like, comment, subscribe. All that stuff really does help the channel grow, and I'll see you in the next one.